When I first saw the old cabin hidden deep in the overgrown woods, I knew it was something special. Its timbers leaned with age, its windows were boarded up, and the land around it was nearly swallowed by vines. But beneath the dust, I saw history. So, I bought it. A 150-year-old estate, long forgotten by time. What I didn't expect was the HOA president, Karen, showing up the next morning screaming that I had stolen her son's inheritance. She waved papers, called the sheriff, and swore the land was hers by blood. But here's the thing, I had every right to it. What followed was a battle of ownership, lies, and a hidden secret buried under generations of family greed. I didn't just restore a cabin. I uncovered a century-old deception that proved the entire neighborhood was built on stolen land. And Karen's family started it all. Asterisk, when I first drove down the narrow dirt road that twisted through the pines, I didn't expect to find anything at all. The GPS had already given up, the signal vanished, and the map showed nothing but a gray blur. But there it was, a clearing hidden deep in the woods. And in the middle of it stood a cabin so old it looked like time itself had tried to erase it. The roof sagged under decades of leaves, the porch leaned to one side, and ivy crawled up the walls like green veins gripping the past. I stepped out of the truck and just stood there for a moment, listening. There was no sound except the wind and the occasional creak of wood. Something about that silence made me feel like the place had been waiting for someone, maybe me, to find it again. I'd been buying and restoring old properties for years, turning forgotten buildings into homes filled with life again. But this one was different. The cabin wasn't listed on any modern registry at first. It was buried in an estate sale, a leftover from a bundle of old land deeds I'd been researching. A few phone calls, a stack of paperwork, and a modest payment later, it was mine. I didn't expect competition. After all, who'd want a broken-down cabin miles away from civilization? But something about it pulled me in. The real estate agent warned me, it's been empty for over 50 years. Locals say it's haunted, or cursed, depending on who you ask. I laughed it off. I wasn't afraid of stories. I was after history. The first few days on the property felt like stepping into another century. The air smelled of pine and wet soil, and every sunrise broke through the forest canopy like golden fire. I began clearing the overgrowth, cutting down small trees that had rooted too close to the cabin walls. The logs were still strong, hand-cut timbers, not modern lumber. Whoever built it to last. Inside, the cabin was dusty but intact. The stone fireplace dominated the main room, blackened by old smoke. I found rusted tools, an iron kettle, and even a rocking chair that groaned when I touched it. I imagined someone sitting there, generations ago, listening to the fire crackle during long winters. One afternoon, as I swept out the dirt, a car engine growled outside. I stepped onto the porch and saw a white SUV stop by my fence line. A woman climbed out, wearing oversized sunglasses and a fitted beige suit, completely out of place among the pines. She looked around like she was inspecting something beneath her, then marched toward me. "Excuse me," she snapped. "What exactly do you think you're doing here?" I told her calmly, restoring it. "I just bought the property." She froze for a second, then her face twisted with disbelief. "Bought it? That's impossible. This land belongs to the Crowley family. It's been in our history for generations." She jabbed a manicured finger toward the cabin. "That's my son's inheritance." Her words caught me off guard. I'd heard nothing about any Crowleys in the paperwork. "Ma'am," I said, trying to stay polite, "I bought this through the county. It's legally registered in my name." She crossed her arms, glaring. "You must have been scammed. I'm the president of the Oak Ridge Homeowners Association, and this property falls under our jurisdiction. You can't just build or change anything here without approval." That part made me almost laugh. With respect, I told her, "This cabin was built before your HOA even existed. My land isn't under any association." Her jaw clenched. For a long second, she didn't move. Then she said, through gritted teeth, "We'll see about that," and stormed back to her SUV, as her tires kicked up dirt. I stood there wondering what I'd just stepped into. That night, I sat on the porch, listening to the crickets and thinking about her words. My son's inheritance. What did that even mean? I went through the documents again, reading the old title history. The records mentioned the Crowley estate as the original owner in the 1800s, but the parcel had changed hands several times since then. It had been foreclosed, auctioned, and forgotten until I came along. There was nothing that tied it to any current family or HOA. Still, her reaction didn't sit right with me. There was something behind her anger, something more than pride. Maybe guilt, maybe greed. But as I looked at the cabin, half illuminated by the moonlight, I felt a strange sense of purpose. This wasn't just another fixer-up. It was a story waiting to be told, a truth waiting to be unearthed. And though I didn't know it then, that woman Karen would do everything in her power to stop me from discovering it. The next morning, I woke to the sound of hammering on metal. For a split second, I thought someone was working on the cabin roof, until I stepped outside and saw a bright orange sign nailed to my front gate. Notice of violation, unauthorized construction. It had the Oak Ridge HOA logo stamped across the bottom and a scrawled signature that read, President Karen Holt. I couldn't help but chuckle. It had barely been 24 hours since our first encounter, and she'd already declared war. I tore the notice off and tossed it in my truck bed. The cabin sat on a parcel of land surrounded by forest and separated from the Oak Ridge neighborhood by nearly half a mile of unmarked terrain. There was no shared road, no utilities, no HOA fees, nothing that connected me to them. I'd even confirmed it twice with the county, but clearly Karen thought authority could stretch wherever she pointed. I spent the rest of the day repairing the porch steps and patching a leak in the roof. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that eyes were watching me through the trees. That evening, as I gathered tools, I spotted headlights flickering between the pines. A small convoy of SUVs had parked near the edge of my property. I walked closer and saw a group of neighbors, about 5 or 6 people whispering to each other while Karen stood at the center like a commander. When she noticed me, she raised a clipboard. "You're violating multiple community ordinances," she said, her voice sharp enough to cut through the air. "We've received complaints about noise, environmental damage, and illegal renovation." I raised an eyebrow. "You received complaints? From who?" "The squirrels." A few of the neighbors chuckled nervously, but Karen's glare silenced them. "You think this is funny? This property has historical value. You're desecrating a family landmark." I pointed toward the cabin. "If I hadn't stepped in, it would have collapsed by winter. I'm restoring it, not destroying it. And again, this isn't your HOA's land." Karen took a step closer. "I have documents proving this parcel was once part of Oak Ridge's boundaries." "Show me," I said. She hesitated, flipping through her clipboard before muttering, "You'll get them soon enough." Then she waved for her group to leave. As their cars disappeared into the night, I realized this wasn't going to be the last confrontation. Over the next week, things escalated. I found tire tracks near my fence line. My mailbox was bent in half, and someone had scattered broken glass on my driveway. When I called the county sheriff's office, Deputy Harris, a calm, middle-aged man, came by to take a report. He looked at the damage, then at me. "Let me guess," he said with a knowing smile. "Karen, you've dealt with her before?" I asked. He sighed. "She's famous around here. Runs that HOA like her personal kingdom. Most people just give in to her to avoid the drama." "Well," I said, "I'm not most people." He grinned. "Didn't think you were." He handed me his card. "If she keeps this up, call me. You've got the law on your side." But folks like her don't care about facts. They care about control. The next day, I went to the county recorder's office myself. I wanted copies of every deed tied to the property, just to be absolutely certain. The clerk, an older woman with glasses hanging from her neck, flipped through microfilm records and pulled out a thick folder. "This land has quite a history," she said. "Originally part of the Crowley estate, back in the 1800s, most of it was sold off after the war. But a few acres, including your cabin, were never officially incorporated into Oak Ridge." "Crowley," I repeated, the name sparking recognition. "That's Karen's maiden name, isn't it?" The clerk nodded. "It is. Her grandfather developed the Oak Ridge subdivision in the 50s, but there were some irregularities in the transfer records. A few lots never fully cleared. That caught my attention." "Irregularities? Like what?" She leaned closer, lowering her voice. "The deeds were rushed through. Some landowners were never paid in full. It's old history, but not clean." I left the office that afternoon with a stack of photocopied records under my arm and a growing sense of unease. The Crowleys had built their wealth on questionable deals, and Karen was now standing on the shaky ground of her ancestors' mistakes. Maybe that's why she was so desperate to reclaim this property, not for her son, but for her pride. That night, I laid the documents on the cabin table and traced the property lines. My land stood apart, legally untouched by Oak Ridge's reach, but it also held something deeper, a story that had been hidden under layers of paperwork and arrogance. As the wind howled outside, I made myself a promise. I wasn't going to back down. I'd restore this cabin, uncover its history, and show Karen that power doesn't come from titles or threats, it comes from truth. What I didn't realize then was that truth would soon expose far more than either of us expected. Days passed, and though Karen had gone quiet for a while, I could tell it was the calm before the storm. Her silence wasn't surrender, it was strategy. She was the kind of person who plotted behind closed doors, waiting for the perfect moment to strike again. Meanwhile, I threw myself into the restoration. Fixing the cabin helped me think. I replaced broken beams, cleaned soot from the fireplace, and sanded the floors until the old wood shone like amber. Every creak, every nail I pulled, felt like peeling back layers of forgotten time. One morning, as I pried up a loose floorboard near the hearth, something caught my eye. Beneath the plank was a small metal corner, rusted and dusty. I knelt down, brushing away dirt until a full box appeared, wedged between two joists. It was about the size of a shoebox, sealed with an iron latch that had nearly fused shut. My heart started to race. I carried it outside into the sunlight, grabbed a hammer, and gently knocked the latch free. The lid creaked open with a puff of old air, smelling of dust, oil, and age. Inside were yellowed papers tied with twine, a few old photographs, and what looked like legal documents. I sat on the porch and started going through them. The top sheet was a deed dated 1873 Crowley Estate, Parcel 7. my property. The next few pages included handwritten letters between family members, talking about developers offering unfair prices and keeping the land for future generations. But then, buried among the stack, was a document marked Confidential Agreement -1954. It bore 2 signatures, William Crowley and Ralph Denton, Oak Ridge Development Company. My stomach tightened as I read the words. Transfer of property under provisional payment pending full settlement. It was a sale agreement, but not a legitimate one. The clause about pending settlement meant the sale wasn't completed legally. No wonder the county records were so messy. The developers had taken the land, built Oak Ridge, and never finished paying. Legally, that could mean parts of Oak Ridge were built on disputed property. And the only surviving original section, my cabin, was proof. I took photos of everything and stored the box safely inside. But before I could even process what I'd found, I heard the sound of tires crunching gravel. Karen's white SUV rolled up again, stopping right at my gate. She stepped out, looking angrier than ever, her phone already recording. "You've been trespassing on private heritage property," she shouted. "I warned you. The HOA voted last night to remove unauthorized structures. You need to vacate this land immediately." I sighed, wiping my hands on my jeans. "Karen, you really don't know when to quit, do you?" She pointed her phone closer to my face. "Don't you talk down to me? This property belongs to the Crowley line, and you're destroying history for profit." I almost laughed. "Funny thing about history," I said. "It tends to tell the truth when you actually look for it." Her eyes narrowed. "What's that supposed to mean?" I didn't answer. Instead, I walked inside, grabbed one of the old letters from the metal box, and handed it to her. "This is your great-grandfather's handwriting, isn't it? You might want to read it." She took it hesitantly, scanning the faded ink. As her eyes moved down the page, her expression changed from defiance to confusion, then to shock. "Where did you get this?" she whispered. "From under the floorboards," I said. "Seems your family didn't just lose this land. They sold it illegally. That makes this cabin the only untouched piece of the original estate. Everything else, including your neighborhood, sits on shaky ground." Her face went pale. For the first time since I'd met her, Karen didn't have a comeback. She clutched the letter tightly, then shoved it back at me. "You can't prove anything," she snapped, though her voice trembled. "You're bluffing." "I'm not," I said quietly, "and the county will see these documents soon enough." She glared at me for a long moment, then turned sharply and got back into her car. The tires spun as she sped off down the road, leaving a cloud of dust behind her. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the look on her face, that mixture of anger and fear. She wasn't just protecting her pride anymore. She was protecting a family secret that could destroy everything she built her reputation on. The HOA wasn't just a community, it was her inheritance, her symbol of legacy. And now, it was under threat because of what I'd found. That as the cabin creaked softly in the cool night air. I went over the documents again, page by page. The signatures, the clauses, the letters, everything pointed to a decades-old fraud that had gone unnoticed. And the proof was sitting right here, in my hands. I didn't know what Karen would do next, but one thing was certain. She wouldn't stop quietly. The truth I'd unearthed beneath those floorboards had started a fire, and soon, the whole town would feel the heat. The morning after Karen's visit, the forest didn't feel peaceful anymore. The soft rustle of pine needles and the chirping of birds seemed distant, muted under a strange tension that hung in the air. I'd woken early, planning to drive to the county office and file the documents I'd found beneath the cabin. But before I could even grab my keys, I heard the rumble of engines outside. I stepped onto the porch and froze. 3 pickup trucks and 2 SUVs were parked along my fence line. Men in reflective vests were unloading equipment, chainsaws, ropes, even a bulldozer parked just off the dirt road. Standing proudly beside them, clipboard in hand, was Karen. Her hair was tied back tight, and her expression was the smug smile of someone who thought she'd already won. "Morning," she called out. "We're here to clear this property. HOA approved project." I walked down to the gate, my patience wearing thin. "You've lost your mind, Karen. You can't touch this land." "I've already told you, it's not part of your HOA," she smirked. "You can say that all you want, but we've received multiple reports of unsafe conditions and illegal construction. This area is a safety hazard. We're taking it down before someone gets hurt." "You're trespassing," I said firmly. "Every single one of you." The men looked uneasy, glancing at each other. Karen waved him on. "Ignore him. He's bluffing." I stepped back toward my porch and pulled out my phone. "Then, I guess you won't mind if the sheriff decides who's bluffing." Within 20 minutes, 2 sheriff's vehicles pulled up. Deputy Harris was in the lead. He climbed out, looking half amused and half exasperated. "Karen," he said, pinching the bridge of his nose, "what did we talk about last time?" She snapped. "This man is endangering the community. His cabin is falling apart, and he's operating machinery without permits." Harris raised an eyebrow. "You mean the property that's been privately owned since the 1800s, and confirmed to be outside HOA jurisdiction?" Karen's confident grin faltered. That's still under review." "No," Harris said firmly. "It's not. I've seen the county map myself. This land is independent. You and your crew need to leave now." The workers didn't hesitate. They packed up their gear quickly, clearly wanting no part of whatever feud was unfolding. Karen's face turned red as she glared at me. "You think you've won?" she hissed. "You have no idea what you're up against. My family built this community. My grandfather founded Oak Ridge. You can't just erase that history." "I'm not erasing anything," I said quietly. "I'm just showing the truth." She stormed off, muttering something about lawyers. But the damage to her confidence was clear. She wasn't expecting the law to side with me. After they left, Harris lingered a bit, resting his hand on the porch railing. "She's not going to stop," he warned. "You found something she doesn't want anyone to see, didn't you?" I nodded. "Old deeds, letters, proof that Oak Ridge was built on fraudulent transfers. Her family's at the center of it." He let out a low whistle. "That explains a lot. Just be careful. Folks like her don't back down when pride's involved." That evening, I drove to the county recorder's office with the box of documents. The clerk who'd helped me before nearly dropped her pen when she saw the originals. "Where did you find these?" she asked. "Under the floorboards," I said. "They prove the Crowleys never fully transferred the property." She examined the signatures and the 1954 agreement, then said, "These are legitimate. I'll make certified copies right now." This could affect the entire Oak Ridge subdivision. When I left the office, the sun was dipping below the trees, casting long shadows across the road. I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and unease. I'd done the right thing, but deep down, I knew this wasn't over. That night, as I returned to the cabin, I saw something that made my stomach drop. My front gate was open, and the padlock was broken. The porch light had been smashed, and the front door was slightly ajar. I rushed inside, heart pounding. The cabin was a mess. Papers were scattered across the floor, the box overturned. Whoever had come in knew exactly what they were looking for. The old letters were gone. The 1954 agreement, missing. For a moment, I stood there in silence, fists clenched, trying to steady my breathing. Then I noticed a single sheet left behind, half crumpled near the fireplace. It wasn't one of the original documents. It was a note, written in sharp, neat handwriting. "Stop digging into things that aren't yours. Some histories are better left buried." No signature, but I didn't need one. I knew who had written it. Karen had broken into my cabin, or had someone else do it for her, and taken the proof. She'd crossed a line now. As the fire crackled low in the hearth, I sat at the table, staring at the empty box. She thought she could intimidate me, that stealing evidence would make me quit. But she didn't realize something crucial. I'd already made certified copies at the county office before driving home. The truth was safe, and soon. Everyone in Oak Ridge would know exactly what her family legacy was built on. The storm had broken, and there was no turning back. The night after the break-in was the longest I'd spent at the cabin. Every creak in the wood and whisper of wind made me sit up, half expecting headlights to appear again. The once peaceful forest felt haunted, not by ghosts, but by greed and secrets that had been buried too long. I barely slept. By dawn, I'd made up my mind. It was time to end this once and for all. The first thing I did that morning was call Deputy Harris. He arrived within an hour, his cruiser crunching over the gravel drive. I showed him the broken padlock, the ransacked cabin, and the threatening note left behind. He frowned, shaking his head. "This has Karen written all over it," he muttered. "But without proof she was here, it's hard to pin it on her." "She took the original documents," I said, pointing to the empty box on the table. "But I already submitted copies to the county office yesterday." That got his attention. "Then she's in trouble," he said. "If those documents prove what you claim, the county will have to act fast." By afternoon, the phone call came from the county recorder's office. The official sounded both excited and anxious. "We've reviewed the records you brought in," she said. "They confirm fraudulent transfers between the Crowley family and the Oak Ridge developers. We've already notified the district attorney's office." Within days, investigators arrived at Oak Ridge. County surveyors re-examined the boundary lines, and news began spreading through the community. Rumors flew like wildfire. Neighbors whispered in driveways and at mailboxes. Some were furious, not at me, but at Karen. Her family's name had been the foundation of their neighborhood, and now it was cracked wide open. Karen, of course, didn't take it quietly. She showed up one last time at the edge of my property, her car door slamming like thunder. I stepped onto the porch as she marched toward me, eyes red and full of fury. "You ruined everything," she shouted. "Do you have any idea what you've done to my family's name?" I didn't raise my voice. "I didn't ruin it. Karen, your grandfather did when he sold land that wasn't his to sell. You've spent years defending a lie." Her lips trembled, and for the first time, she didn't look like the confident HOA president. She looked small, fragile. My father always told me this land was our legacy," she whispered, "that this cabin was stolen from us." "Maybe he believed that," I said softly, "but sometimes, the stories we grow up hearing aren't the truth. They're just what people tell themselves to feel powerful." She turned away, her shoulders shaking. "They'll destroy Oak Ridge over this," she said quietly. "Maybe," I replied, "but at least it'll be built on truth this time." Karen didn't say another word. She got into her SUV, paused for a long moment, and then drove off. That was the last time I ever saw her. In the following weeks, the investigation deepened. Several parcels of land within Oak Ridge were frozen under legal review. The HOA board was dissolved pending restructuring, and the community's control reverted temporarily to the county. The local paper ran a story about the discovery of the old deeds and the restoration of the Crowley cabin. My name was mentioned, but I didn't care about recognition. What mattered was that the truth, long buried under greed and arrogance, was finally out in the open. With the chaos behind me, I turned my focus back to the cabin. I finished rebuilding the porch, polished the stone fireplace, and replaced the broken window panes. It stood tall again, proud, timeless, and free from anyone's control. I hung the old Crowley letter by the fireplace, the one that spoke of keeping the land for future generations. The irony wasn't lost on me. It was finally being honored, just not by the people who claimed to deserve it. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the tree line, I sat on the porch with a cup of coffee, listening to the quiet hum of the forest. The air felt lighter now, the tension gone. For the first time since I'd bought the place, I felt peace, not just with the land, but with the journey it took to reclaim it. The cabin wasn't just restored in wood and stone, it was restored in truth. A week later, a small envelope arrived in my mailbox. It had no return address. Inside was a single photograph, an old black and white image of the cabin from the 1920s, with a family standing in front. Written on the back, in faded ink, were the words, "The land remembers the honest ones." I smiled, folded the photo carefully, and placed it next to the framed letter. The cabin had seen generations come and go, greed rise and fall, but now it finally stood free, as it was always meant to be, and as the fire crackled softly that night, I realized something simple but powerful. Sometimes, restoring a place isn't just about rebuilding wood and walls, it's about giving history its voice back. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe to my YouTube channel, HOA Bright Reality. Discover more shocking HOA and homeowner stories, where every neighborhood has a secret waiting to be revealed.